As the war situation deteriorated still further and the strength of Allied bombing increased, as pressure built from Hitler to get his Blitz bomber into service, it was decided in June 1944 to forgo any further major redesign work on the UMO engine, freeze the design with all of its faults and begin full production. It was this decision that saw the beginning of deliveries to the Luftwaffe, with 28 Me-262As accepted in June, 59 in July, just 20 in August, 91 in September and 117 in October. In total, the Luftwaffe had received 315 by the beginning of November 1944. However, it was still the case that almost all the 262s being produced were earmarked for fighter bomber duties. Hitler could not be moved on the matter. Within a month of his appointment, the new Luftwaffe Chief of Staff was pressing Hitler to release the 262 for service solely as a fighter. The only concession the Führer made was to allow every 20th aircraft to be produced as a fighter. This was unacceptable to General Kreipe, and it was on this issue he tendered his resignation in September. It was only in November that Hitler finally relented and gave the go-ahead for the 262 to be produced as a fighter, although obstinate to the last, he insisted that each aircraft must be able to carry a 551-pound bomb in an emergency. So bad was the war situation by this time that the Luftwaffe and Messerschmitt ignored his command on the matter. While records show that over 600 262s had been received by the Luftwaffe by January, many never reached their Luftwaffe operators as they were destroyed on the trains carrying them by Allied fighter bombers. Even for those 262s in service, extreme care was needed to protect and camouflage them on the ground from marauding Allied Jabos for whom the German jets became primary targets. The inbuilt armament of the 262 was the most formidable carried by any German fighter in the war. This comprised 4 30mm cannon mounted in the nose. In addition, 24 unguided R4M rockets could be carried on underwing racks, adding a weight of fire of 53 pounds to that of the cannon. In an effort to equip the 262 with heavier firepower, a number were converted to test the mounting of 50mm cannon for anti-bomber work. 2 types of weapon of this caliber were employed in tests beginning in January 1945. This demonstrated that carriage and firing of the weapon produced no great problems with the handling of the jet in the air. Based at Akma near to the Belgian border, Commando Novotny was too close to Allied air bases to work up the new fighter free from interception. Allied fighters soon discovered that the 262 was at its most vulnerable when landing and taking off and bounced them, so protection flights of Me-109s and FW-190s had to be provided. Galland was visiting Akma to talk with Novotny when the young commander and fighter ace was killed. On the 8th of December 1944, with Galland still at the base, he took off in his 262 to attack US bombers. With his aircraft having been hit, Novotny tried to regain the base, but he was in an air battle with Mustangs with only one engine working. His 262 plunged out of the skies and dived vertically down to its destruction. As a darling of the propaganda department, he was given a state funeral, dead at the age of 24 with a total score of 258 victories, making him the 5th highest scoring fighter pilot of all time. His command was dissolved to become the new 262 unit JG-7. Me-262s continued to operate through to war's end, and March 1945 was to see their most successful employment. On the 18th, 37 262s engaged 1,221 bombers, escorted by 632 fighters, attacking Berlin. 12 bombers and 2 fighters were shot down by the jets, which used the R4M rocket for the first time. On the last day of March, 262 shot down 14 Allied bombers and 2 fighters for no loss to themselves. In southern Germany, JG-44, the special 262 unit commanded by Adolf Galland, now sacked as Inspector General of Fighters, also engaged in combat, flying out of Munich-Rhein. Although a grand total of 1,200 262s had been accepted by the Luftwaffe, by early April, less than 200 had actually been allocated to units. In this extremely rare piece of film, an Me-262A-1A/U3 Recce variant, is seen just after its return to base from a photographic sortie. This particular aircraft belongs to Neuhof-Clarensgruppe 6, which was originally designated Einsatz Commando Braunegg and was serving in northern Italy in March 1945. A mere handful of this variant was built, the maximum number in service at any one time being 7, recorded on March the 31st, 1945. A window is incorporated in the pilot's floor so he could see what he was photographing, the nose cannon having been removed to fit a variety of camera options. Some pilots did opt to keep a single 30mm cannon alongside their cameras. Arado's AR-234 was the world's first operational jet bomber. Its performance in the reconnaissance role in late 1944 and early 45 was to prove how right its builders were to christen their creation the Lightning, as it swept through Allied airspace with virtual impunity. Indeed, it was to satisfy a 1940 specification for a fast recce type that the 234 was designed. The prototype emerged in 1943 with high-mounted wings and a fuselage cross-section so slim as to preclude the fitting of a conventional undercarriage, the variant seen here being the later type. In the absence of a conventional retractable undercarriage, Arado had designed a three-wheeled trolley that would attach to the underside of the aircraft. This led to the ungainly and militarily unpractical process of raising the whole airframe on jacks and then lowering it bodily onto the trolley. In the early days of testing, the 234 took off with the trolley attached, as can be seen here. For the pilot bringing the 234 back to land on the trolley, the whole experience was decidedly unpleasant and very dangerous. The sink rate of the aircraft and the fairly high spring in the suspension of the trolley led to a very bumpy ride down the runway, with very little control being exercised through the brakes. By the end of the runway, the pilot has lost control and the aircraft pulls off onto the side and swerves onto the grass. The test aircraft was then flown once again, employing the trolley for takeoff. When takeoff speed was achieved, the pilot jettisoned his undercarriage. This in turn released a parachute to break the trolley's forward momentum and to stop it bouncing up and possibly hitting the aircraft in the underside. Trolley takeoffs were also made employing 2 Walter rocket pods for extra thrust. These gave an additional burst of power for some 30 seconds and allowed the 234 to make a much more rapid climb out, so avoiding any chance of collision on its underside by the trolley. Once in the air, the 234 demonstrates the turn of speed that made it so difficult for Allied fighters to intercept. While few could doubt the sparkling performance of the 234, its use of an under-fuselage skid and 2 smaller ones mounted under each engine when landing severely restricted its operational usage. It was thus accepted that the Arado 234 would need to be redesigned to enable the fuselage to accommodate a more conventional retractable undercarriage.